Welcome to the Kinetic Life podcast, brought to you by Kinetic Renew.
This podcast is dedicated to helping you find your way to your dreams, your goals, and your success. We'll be fueling that with key information on topics like health, science, tech, and lifestyle, coated with a few laughs along the way. In this episode, Bug Super Propulsion Tea, Crocodiles for better health, miracle cure, or just a croc. Cut the yo-yo string, because the yo-yo diet is all in your head. 5 cups a day to keep diabetes at bay. 1 cup of matcha tea will put on a happy face and help your depression. And now we begin. Here's Michael Chalavutis and Dr. Mark Hertzberg.
Welcome to KINETIQLIFE podcast. It's a great day for a great day. I'm your host, Mike Chalavutis, with my good friend, Dr. Mark Hertzberg.
Hello from Dr. Mark Hertzberg.
Well, Mark, as a child, while you were going to the bathroom,
Why are you speaking about that in the past tense? Never speak about my childhood in the past tense. It limits things.
Okay, last week, have you ever taken a step back to see how far you could urinate to make it into the toilet? Test that, the pressure?
How about that King of the World scene at the front of the Titanic?
You don't think you...
300 feet!
That was you with the Titanic peeing off it?
You know what? Even further if you do it from the back of the ship.
Well, I bring up this wacky concept because...
Yeah, it bugs me.
Oh, well, evolution is a weird thing, and apparently there's a bug out there called the glasswing sharpshooter, which is a name seems very appropriate, that not only does it pee 300 times its body weight a day, but it could shoot its urine at 40 G.
Well, it must be having a lot of that powdered beer we talked about a few episodes ago.
You would think. But it's not its copious alcohol consumption. Apparently, the glasswing sharpshooter lives off of the...
Is that a Marvel character? The glasswing sharpshooter.
It might be. I think it might be one of the Spider-Man movies, one of the evil villains. But it lives off of the fluid in plants, which is not overly nutritious. So it needs to consume lots of it. And for whatever strange reason, it developed a system which when it releases its little droplets of urine,
it pulls it up first in a gooey mess.
And then using its tail, it almost like a pinball handle, launches it as fast and far as possible. And for our listeners, I'll make sure to add the link to the description.
Right. They faster than the human eye can see, so they had to use technology to even get this down. They have an anal appendage, which itself is a great word, but the appendage is called a butt flicker. So that's going to become part of the vernacular.
I feel like that's something you would call someone in like 3rd grade. You butt flicker.
I'm too rich to scratch my own. I have a professional butt flicker follow me around. But it's kind of like a spring and lever catapult. And they said what's even weirder is the airspeed of the anal expulsions. And they keep saying, I wonder if this is kind of like a bird that puts everything into one thing and it's not just a urine.
Super concentrated.
But it's all of the
300 times their body weight a day it can't be that concentrated.
These flickers, if they're going to throw it, if at 40, number one, it achieves 40 Gs. That's the acceleration. That's instant. And it's going to flick it that far. You figure that the flippers that catapult it are going pretty fast.
You would think.
But the droplets, once flicked, are going 40% faster than the flickers that flicked them. So they say basically it's using a special principle of physics called super propulsion. which is probably how Clark Kent can fly. But it's never been seen outside of synthetic. That really means human technology systems. And it has something to do about the frequency of the flickers and the frequency of the material being flicked are in some form of harmonic multiplication, that they're the same, positive interference. They don't go into how that would actually work, because I do know that you can destroy something by matching the frequency of the material. That's how the right note could break glass, but not glassy wings, apparently. But somehow it could also change. So I think if we could design baseball bats with the same harmonic frequency, or if the swing speed had the same harmonic frequency as the baseball, it would go 40% further than the bat that hit it.
40 times
faster. It would start faster than the bat that hit it.
Needless to say, besides taking this technology and bringing it elsewhere, it's a very interesting evolutionary tactic. I'm not sure are they attacking their enemies with their urine, or they just feel the need to push it really far away. Maybe
there's something really bad about the urine that it got to go far away. And sometimes something is adapted to something you don't see anymore. I'll give an example. They had once, and this is something I probably read 30, 40 years ago, where they were confused. They were studying the ant colony, and they had taken it and put the ant colony in a wall in a lab and let it do its own thing. It wasn't, and the ants would take garbage out. They built a nest in the wall, and they would take garbage. They'd go to the edge of the nest, then they would walk a very specific distance. So I don't know, if it's 20 inches, 30 inches, whatever, down, and then drop it. And they said, why don't they just drop it from the edge? Why do they walk that far down? And then someone went back and discovered that you took them from an area that was exactly that far from a cliff. So for generations, they would take garbage, whatever it was, 27 inches, to the cliff and drop it. So as so they were adapted to something you weren't seeing in the lab.
Very true.
So
interesting.
But they never figured out you don't have to anymore. It sounds like they're led by Daffy Duck, where Bugs would go, well, Daffy, realize he's a bird and he can fly. Does Daffy remember he's a duck and he floats?
The Kinetic Life podcast is sponsored by Kinetic Renew. With benefits like anxiety relief that doesn't knock you out, Renew increases energy, focus, and provides brain support. So get on with your day with Renew in liquid or gel caps. Visit KineticLife.com now and try it. That's KINETIQ Life.com now.
Well, keeping on with the coolness of nature.
And the inspiration for technology. Because you can do things with it. Like you get a watch face to vibrate the right way and it will clean itself. Ooh, you add this to what we discussed a few episodes ago.
Self-cleaning screen?
Yeah, and get the right vibration pattern. But also inside electronics and structurally complex surfaces. Also forget gooey messes that are stuck to things. There's all types of, once you understand it, things that you can do. It's also about nature knowing something we should figure out.
But in this case, it's medicine.
Okay.
Talking about our good old friend, a good old crocodile, which, didn't realize. I mean, I knew they've been around for a long time. 83 million years.
I was wondering when we'd get about to that, but it was always, see you later, alligator. We'll talk about crocodiles in a while. But now we get to sink our teeth into crocodilians.
Yeah, granted, they've evolved, they're smaller than they used to be or whatever, but they've been around for a very long time.
Right. The funny thing is, I learned something about them very recently, which when they say the crocodilians go back this is 80-something. I think ancestors of crocodilians go back a lot longer than that because I think they were there before dinosaurs. And dinosaurs are almost 210 million years.
Oh, wow.
So this might be talking certain types.
Oh, okay.
Okay, and yeah, and there were some very big crocs that ate certain kinds of dinosaurs. And some people go, well, how come the crocs survived and the dinosaurs didn't? It's not true. Certain types of crocs survived, just like birds were certain types of dinosaurs that survived. Mm-hmm. And the types that survived were the swampy types, ones that were on the edge of land and water, mainly in water, which is what we are familiar with today. There were deep sea crocs, they're gone. There were completely land crocs, they're gone.
There was deep sea crocs?
Yeah.
I had no idea.
Oh, yeah. There were a lot more way back then. But there are a whole bunch today, but all are descended from a similar...
Yeah.
Having that in common. And pretty much, I don't know if all, but most, if not all, still are somewhat to that right at the edge thing. So, but in any case, you know, they're in that swamp. That's a messy thing, and they live a rough, messy life. So you get a lot of cuts and stuff, and they should have a lot of infection trouble, you would think.
Yeah, but apparently they have no issue fighting off fungal infections. They have a very powerful immune system, which is why scientists decided to look into how is that the case, and could we take that to help us humans who are dealing with, you know, issues of antibiotic-resistant funguses and bacteria.
Well, can we?
Well, they can.
Ooh, I didn't see that coming.
So it's they were talking about the immune system using a CPO-BDB.
C3PO, he's in this.
C3PO. It's a pH-sensitive system.
Okay, so they're talking about there's small proteins called defensins, which we have too. Everybody has defensins, but they have a special one with CPO. There's no the three's at the end. CPO BD13. Okay, and it's the saltwater crocodiles we're talking about.
Okay, specifically
not the freshwater, as far as we know. Okay, so the difference between theirs and ours, and as far as they know now, theirs and every other creature in nature, is that theirs can actually register pH level and adjust their activity based on that.
And I was a little confused reading that. I'm assuming it's the pH level of an area of the body.
Well, I guess they're saying in general it can tell pH, but what they're saying is when you start having infections and inflammation stuff, the pH changes.
So it's a regional, pH changing in this area of the body, upswing the immune system.
Right. So it's using a sign of how much is needed to regulate how much goes there, how long it works, when it stops. So it's basically a control issue. It's not that they have an immune thing that can attack and kill stuff we can't. It's that they have a better leader. They have something that can tell much better where and when it's all needed. So they're looking at they look at this specific defensin, and it has they get down to the very detailed structure of the proteins and all, and they're going, it's actually extremely similar to some human defensins.
Wow.
So I guess they never
it could be a small structural difference.
Right, but they were talking about when we learn how this works, we can adapt it. But what they didn't say, but I guess hinted at, is if we have ones that are pretty similar, when we figure out what the little difference is, we might be able to genetically engineer so that we could have one that can do the same thing. In the meantime, getting medicines and things that can target the area better. A lot of what we've been talking about the last few episodes gets to is all like targeting.
Yeah, I mean, because a lot of the original, medicine therapies have been more broad spectrum, where when being more specific, besides being more effective,
more elegant.
Yes, but reduces side effects and issues.
Right. So a lot of what medical advancement over the generations is we're going from attacking things with bombs and grenades to attacking things with machine guns to attacking things
Sniper.
with a lot of shooting to sharpshooting, sniper, elegant, like that. So this would be a really good step in that.
So if we're going sniper, what would a nanobot be when they start getting nanotherapies?
Ooh, the nanobot would be a little bit outside of this because that's kind of like billions and billions of tiny bullets, but you would have something that would try to get there first to, that would be like when you say, okay, first shoot somebody with the targeting thing, like the laser, and then have the missile home in on that.
Laser guided.
Ah.
Happiness lies in the joy of achievement and the thrill of creative effort. Franklin D. Roosevelt. Optimism is the faith that leads to achievement. Nothing can be done without hope and confidence. Helen Keller. Comfort is the enemy of achievement. Farrah Gray. All our dreams can come true if we have the courage to pursue them. Walt Disney. High achievement always takes place in the framework of high expectation. Charles Kettering. Now go do something. Don't just sit there.
Now let's talk about your diet, because we're concerned, Mark.
My diet?
You've been yo-yoing for way too long. Just because you have a physical doesn't mean you're going to have to drop 20 pounds and then put it back on 2 weeks later.
Just because you feel like a puppet on a string doesn't mean that I'm controlled by one, baby. Okay, so you want to get to other people's diets who yo-yo. This is one of those things that wants to say it's not completely their fault.
Hey, well, you know what? If someone's making good money off it, apparently it's a $224 billion industry. Which
now,
and
it's a fast-growing industry.
Yeah,
7 years from now,
over $400 billion. So they don't want you to stop the yo-yo. They want, the corporations want you to keep yo-yoing, so you keep buying whatever they're selling.
Like one thing, remember going when I first saw this stat 1,000 years ago, which is going, when you lower the weight, you lower the risk of dying from that, but you raise the risk of dying from this and this and this and this if the weight goes too low. And they're going, every pound below the healthiest weight is as dangerous as 10 pounds above the healthiest rate when you look at all factors. So they're going, but there's no money in writing 1 million books and diet plans to tell people how to gain weight. So
our current society,
they keep changing what they call the ideal weight to move the target along with this.
And our current society has a more issue with too much weight, not enough.
Right, and then there's we got to the thing of thin models, thinner models. I'm going, these people look like death warmed over. They didn't look attractive.
And now we went to the other.
Even the bones are sticking out through the skin. Oh, that,
And now we got to the other side of the spectrum.
Then you move. Well, now it's kind of like you're not allowed to judge. So models, the uglier, the more appropriate. But that's a whole other story.
Let's not promote underweight or overweight. What about healthy people?
Yeah. And there are some people, even when you talk about, that this weight is good for that. Because, again, when you go too far down, you might be having a weaker immune system to fight cancer, even if you're putting less stress on the heart.
Yes.
But you get way too low and you're really famished, that ain't good for the heart either.
Oh, the heart, the thyroid.
So that's a type of weight that I'm not talking about someone, who has can't hide it 25-pound belly roll that if they lose 15 pounds, it's not going to be healthier. But if you have someone who has to tighten their belt and they're trying to lose weight, you can be too little and a lot of things go haywire. So
anyway, one of the stats they mentioned, which I was actually surprised, was that within 2 years, people who lost weight, 50% gets back down. By 5 years, 80% is returned. I actually thought that was pretty good. I figured it would be much quicker that you'd gain half the weight back. But they said that there's a huge psychological component to it and that people putting it back on were having, it was an emotionally taxing thing. So they wanted to look at, from a neurological standpoint, what's really going on while you're dieting, and is there any way if we play with those, those systems, it will help you not only lose weight but keep the weight off. And they went towards the hypothalamus, the good old hypothalamus.
And what did the hypothalamus have to say about this?
Well, the hypothalamus is one of the specific, nerves in it. Plays a big role in hunger. And
do you want the specific?
It's
hold on.
It's AGRP, but I forget what it stands for. Agarpin.
Oh, by the way, we should say that this is by Max Planck Institute along with Harvard Med.
Brought to you by the Max Planck Institute.
And
brought to you by Planck's Constant.
Planck's Constant. Einstein's mentor, kinda. A agouti-related peptide, neurons in the hypothalamus, which control feelings of hunger. Feelings, nothing more than feelings.
And apparently those neurons get very active when you're dieting. So much so that when you lose weight, you just want to put it back on.
Yeah, so the hunger signals increase? Yeah, that's the word. So that you want more food, so you start gaining weight quicker and quicker. And they had already known that there's in the upstream, that means earlier in the pathway to these peptides, there are some neurons that will physically synapse with into the...
It would activate it.
Hypothalamus. Yeah. I'm about to say amygdala. We were all wrong. Into the hypothalamus and excites these neurons. And they basically, there's a connection between them that they now call synaptic plasticity, which really means the ability to change how good that connection is. And they're saying that this increases with dieting and weight loss.
Well, I think of plasticity, neuroplasticity with memory. So maybe by the process of weight loss, increasing that ability to be efficient creates those to be more active even after you lose the weight.
But they actually said that the connection is called plasticity. And the ability to make, break, add, change a connection is plasticity.
Yeah.
So, but basically I think what they're saying is when you start gaining weight, it doesn't have the effect on these connections that the dieting, losing weight has. So when you diet and lose weight, you change the system that says, we're losing weight, reverse it. But when it reverses it, it just keeps going because that doesn't change, that signal isn't changed by getting rid of the weight loss. So they now know if you inhibit the connection, which they basically did in an experiment, food intake after weight loss was more regulated.
Yeah, simple as that. Inhibition. Now, if we can find a natural way of inhibiting it, we'd have a very good diet product on our hand. Or maybe that's what Elon Musk's Neuralink. It's like an app. It's a new feature. You could just turn off hunger.
We need something, the reverse of alcohol, since alcohol blocks inhibition. So it's talking on a whole different thing. And we want to increase it, don't we? If you're inhibited from eating.
There is no shortcut to achievement. Life requires thorough preparation. Veneer isn't worth anything. George Washington Carver. Success isn't always about greatness. It's about consistency. Consistent, hard work leads to success. Greatness will come. Dwayne Johnson. There are no secrets to success. It is the result of preparation, hard work, and learning from failure. Colin Powell. Success is the sum of small efforts repeated day in and day out. Robert Collier. Success seems to be largely a matter of hanging on after others have let go. William Feather. I never dreamed about success. I worked for it. Estee Lauder.
Well, speaking about having too much.
Oh, hold on. If I'm going to
Okay.
eat too much, I'm going to need something to wash it down with.
We're not talking about too much eating. We're talking about too much drinking.
Oh!
And this
of
time,
course we are.
coffee. And actually, this is a good thing. Too much coffee, not bad. Too much coffee, good.
Too much coffee. Well, then it's not too much.
Then it's not enough.
Too much coffee is just enough.
No, just enough.
And what does it help with, pray tell?
Diabetes, actually. Diabetes and cardiovascular risk is what they
Those
mentioned.
are big things. And since they're now finding a huge amount of what sets off cardiovascular risk to begin with is actually, even if it's not diabetes, it is the ups and downs of how sugar's acting in the vessels in the body and that.
So let's talk about blood concentration of caffeine.
Always good to have.
And that 3 to 5 cups of coffee a day, which you assume a cup of coffee at this point is probably about 100 milligrams, reduces the chance of diabetes and cardiovascular risk. But now as they went through the article, and what they discussed is that the bigger reduction in diabetes is more because of the reduction in BMI caused by consumption of, or having a higher concentration of caffeine in the blood, which for those who don't know, the half-life of caffeine, I believe, is like 6 to 8 hours, 6 hours, 4 to 6 hours. I think it's 4 to 6, and actually,
Well, it depends how much caffeine the caffeine is drinking, if it lives faster.
and for those on oral birth control, it could be up to 12 hours, the half-life. That's what people don't realize. We had a big issue years ago for those alcoholic caffeinated beverages. You'd have young girls drinking a bunch of them, most of which were probably on birth control.
So was the half-life of alcohol also longer?
I didn't mention that, but I know the half-life of caffeine is much longer. So you're taking in so much more caffeine and it's not going away.
Oh, well. By the way, most people know what BMI is, but let's just for this, the body mass index, which is also related to fat. And they were saying they've already known
Created by the insurance company, so it doesn't tell it just height and weight. Doesn't, but they try to assume that there's a fat, if you have a higher BMI.
Right, because you get these modern scales that will tell you your BMI, and it's like, oh, is this doing some measuring using like voltage flow through the thing to say how fat? And it's like, no.
How tall, how much you weigh, which, just for a funny aside, when I was towards the end of my college career playing sports, and I was even more in shape than I was now, I think I was obese on the BMI index.
Ooh, right. If you have enough muscle and it's just counting weight, or if you have those ankle weights on and forget to take them off when you step on the scale, or my little weighted vest.
Either one works.
Yeah. So, or as anyone knows, for people who were taking for their, they had to take one physical sport activity in college for one had to have at least one class, and you could take tennis or basketball, bowling. There was weight management was considered one, and they didn't judge. And with some of these classes, like if you were Michael Jordan and you signed up for basketball, you were going to fail because they judged you on how much better you are at the end and the beginning. And if they couldn't make you better, there was no. So they weren't talking how good you were, or if you learned how to if you already know Spanish and you take a Spanish class, you're going to do pretty good. Especially don't tell them you speak Spanish.
Well, if they don't know that, you walk in and you can't speak anything.
But you walk in and you're in good shape, you're in trouble because. So what people would do, but everyone's in there weighing together, so people were fully dressed and they would have lead pellets in their pockets, and every week they would take one lead pellet out, and they all got A's because they lost weight, had a better BMI. But in any case, we already knew that short-term BMI improvement from coffee. Do we have how much to risk and fat mass? But they never knew about the long-term effects.
Yeah.
So that's what they're trying to establish. And they also didn't have a causal link. Now, one thing is, if this keeps you a little lighter, then that itself is going to have some positive health outcomes. And if lighter can be two reasons with the coffee. Number one, you're a little more active. And number two, maybe if you don't drink, just like some people smoke more if they don't have coffee. Some people may eat more. Some people, it goes either way. Some people will eat more with the coffee. I'll give you one thing. There's the old joke that if you need to find a cop at night, go to the donut shop. And that is actually true, but it's not the donut. The cops at night need coffee.
Makes sense.
So you will find cops who are on that shift especially, and, keeping with, don't forget, you get long, boring stretches interrupted by hyperactivity. They live on coffee. And where you're going to get coffee, and also when you're drinking the coffee, it's nice to have. So they eat the donuts to accompany the coffee. So it is not a fabrication. It is a myth made out of taking something true, but headlining the wrong part.
Exactly. And actually, when they talk about the reduction in cardiovascular risk, and even probably to some extent the diabetes, they fail to mention the fact of all these wonderful antioxidants that are found in coffee. So if you're having 3 to 5 cups a day, you're getting a nice dose of antioxidants that maybe someone else isn't, which will help with cardiovascular risk, which will help with diabetes risk, and just general health.
And we have to, they basically said we were just looking at statistical to see if the next stage was to start looking for causal, the explanations of why. And they also, remember an episode or two ago, we talked about Mendelian randomization.
And so they use it again.
Do that. And they did say one thing, that this was 9,876 people that they did these statistics on, and they all happened to be from, I guess, they didn't say where they did it, but the people were all European. So they were eliminating the effects of certain genes, which in theory in one way could apply to anyone if you have that gene or this gene.
Yeah.
But they're saying even if you have the exact same gene as someone from different parts of the world, there may be other genes that change how that affects. So they are saying that this is a limited, this isn't anything definitive here. This is just checking to see if the effect is there before we need to now look more and more into it.
More to get out, more research to be done, but good to know that overconsumption of coffee is not a bad thing.
Right, and they did. I mean, they had some major thing. Now, they had a big, it seemed to be, they found 3 to 5 cups of coffee daily. Now, and they're talking 8-ounce cups, because you got to realize you go to a lot of places, the cup you're getting could be 16 to 20 ounces. So they're talking small cups. So a lot of people who think 5 cups is a lot, but they're talking 2 of these cups there, that the person saying 5 is a lot may be having 3 of these 20-ounce cups in a day. Mm-hmm. So these are, they're saying it's not the person who just has a little bit of coffee for morning, but it's not the person who's living on coffee all day long. This is really a fairly normal range of coffee. And basically saying that it definitely lowered the risk of type 2 diabetes. And although they didn't get a causal link, they did say that they could say that at least 43% of the effect on diabetes risk was related to reduction in, they said BMI. Heaviness.
Yeah. Keeping on the topic of wonderful health-oriented stimulants, do you enjoy matcha in the summertime? Have you had matcha before?
I don't even know if I've had matcha. I don't know if I had anything like matcha. I don't know if anything that could match the matcha or matcha.
You should try some. It's quite nice. Matcha, especially you make a matcha latte. It's not as healthy, but it still tastes wonderful.
Latte sounds like coffee. Isn't matcha tea?
Yes.
So you've had it.
I've had matcha.
But you didn't bring some for me to try. Next time, remember, tea for 2 and 2 for tea. If you're 120 years old, then you know my grandfather's songs. Tea for 2 and 2 for tea.
Well, matcha's been around for hundreds of years. I always thought it was mostly just green tea, but according to this, it's a blend of white, green, black, and oolong tea.
No, I don't think that's exactly what it said. It said it comes from the fine powder of the Camellia sinensis plant, and it says that plant is also the source of all these different ones you mentioned.
Okay.
So I guess it's what part of the plant or how you process it makes the
it's
different
the processing
versions.
in a certain part of that, which I would
Do you do
assume is
more
green
stem,
tea.
more leaf, more,
Yeah, I think it's kind of like an early stage. They're picked, and it's kind of like, extra virgin olive oil, the first press type of thing. It's the most nutritious.
Right. And so but it's also, I know, like when you talk, a lot of people, when they have like basil, which has a lot of nice health things to it, but they all remove the leaves and the stems are poison. I don't mean literally, but it's like you can't. So I once looked up, is there any problem? Because I would rip off the really big central stem, but not the little stems. And it's going, the stem right that the leaf is on is very easy to eat. No, not the... and is equally nutritious and tasty as the leaf, basically. It has it's a little better in some things, the leaf's a little better in others. So it goes, if you don't mind it, it's a good idea to use it. The big stem in the middle is basically hard to chew and digest.
Oh, yeah.
So,
I do the same thing. Rip off like the leaves, but keep the small stem, and they chop it all up and mix it with
so I think
pizza,
somebody
pasta,
might
whatever.
make a tea out of the leaf. Someone might say out of the stem, and they'd have slightly different properties.
Of course.
So
anyway, getting aside, they knew the health benefits of matcha because it's high in antioxidants and, the tea, but they wanted to look at the antidepressive properties of matcha and kind of what are they targeting? Where's the target that's causing the antidepressive effects of matcha? And they came up looking at the D1 for dopamine 1 receptor expression. And they found that those that have a low expression of the dopamine 1 receptor are found in depressive people. People expressing depression have low D1 receptor expression. So,
which could mean that in that particular case, even if you have a good amount of dopamine, it's not having enough receptors of this type to activate.
yes. So they actually looked at it in mice, and they actually used 2 genetically bred forms of mice, one that are stress tolerant and then one stress susceptible. And they provided them with the matcha. The stress tolerant, which didn't really go into detail what the stress tolerant meant, but I guess they could handle stress, the matcha had no effect on. But they did find that those that are stress susceptible had positive benefits through the consumption of matcha. So then to test it further, if it truly is the D1 receptor, they blocked the D1 receptor in those stress susceptible mice, and they were reverted back to the previous state.
Right. Now, they may not have said how they define the stress thing, but they did say how they measured it, which is...
The movement, right? It was something...
Yeah, so... Now, the funny thing is, because the first thing you think of in some things is somebody stressed becomes hyper and can't be... But they're talking stress to almost more fear, like where they just got immobile. So, so they're talking... And they think, there's certain reactions that go one way until they go the other. Mm-hmm. And when someone's a little antsy, they're going to pace, they're going to move, they're jittery, they can't keep still. But you get past a certain point and you just hide in a shell. And they're talking these mice that just became immobile.
Yeah.
And apparently what they're saying is, if you're... Now, I don't know, it could be one or two things. They said it didn't help the mellow mice. It helped the anxiety-ridden mice. So it could be that there's something wrong this goes after. Or it could be that you have to have actives of some... And if
you're not expressing that many
right,
of those
so they
receptors
didn't
to
say
begin
if
with.
we took the calm mice and just added more and more stress until they got into a different state, would it have helped at that point?
Very true.
So we don't know. Or is it only that it helps because it takes care of... Again, this is one type of problem with dopamine, the D1 receptor. What if you had D1 receptors but you're not producing dopamine? Would it still help? So...
Yeah, and I mean, I know caffeine does have a play on dopamine receptor to some extent, and matcha, I know, is known for being high in something called L-theanine, which is calming in itself. But also, there's a ton of other compounds in matcha that may be playing a bigger role. And D1, dopamine is just one of many receptors that play a role in depressive tendencies. We still have norepinephrine, serotonin, a lot of other neurotransmitters that are playing a role. But all that aside, it is a natural form of a weak antidepressant, and in itself in general is very healthy for you. So if you feel like you're in a funk in the mornings or even in the afternoons, a nice cup of matcha help good for general health and maybe make you a little bit happier. But I wouldn't have it before bed because matcha is
happier or less depressed. They're different things.
Yeah, okay. I'm going to go less depressed.
Okay.
But do not have matcha before bed because it is very high in caffeine compared to a regular cup of tea. So if you are, especially if you're sensitive to caffeine, having that before bed.
I just wonder if they're going to measure the movement and you take a mouse that's scared and in a shell and you just give it a lot of caffeine, it's going to start moving.
That's true. So maybe I might not have been the best
I could have just said, as an antidepressant, we're judging depression by how still these mice are, and I think a good antidepressant is to take one of these thumbtacks and give them a little poke.
Well, you couldn't give a questionnaire to the mice. How happy are you feeling now?
Self-described depression. Well, you know what we did? With some mice, we went, are you depressed? And if they didn't answer, I go, okay, that's a yes. And if we weren't you happy and the mouse was moving all around, we took that as a yes. Yeah. So they also didn't say, like you just added, they didn't. This has more caffeine than other teas. But they're saying all different types of teas. Is this something very specific in matcha, or is there something that's in other teas too? Especially if some of the teas come from the same plant.
Similar compounds, my understanding is matcha is much higher concentration, especially
of whatever it is that
especially of L-theanine and some of the antioxidants. So you might just need to consume more to get the same effect.
But I think they can play with this to see, does matcha help these depressed mice or not? But I think we should see if we can have our sponsor, Kinetic, send some Renew, which really helps with anxiety. To these mice.
Saffron extract does wonders. So probably more effective at a lower dose.
And I believe that Renew has Afrin, which is like the best kind of saffron you can get.
Oh, yeah. And saffron is not cheap.
No. It's, I believe we did the research. When people say worth its weight in gold, if you go per ounce, it's somewhere between silver and gold. So, yeah. That's why they fed the tea to the mice, not... But I think, we in a humane effort should send a bottle of Renew to the lab.
That's a pretty good idea, Mark.
There you go.
Well, we hope we brought a smile to your face today. I think that's up for us. That's our time. I want to thank everyone again for coming. We really appreciate the support. Any questions you have or comments or anything you'd like for us to discuss, please reach out to us at podcast@kineticlife.com. That's podcast@KINETIQLife.com. Don't forget to like, share, spread the word, spread the love. As always, I'm your host, Mike Shalavutis.
And I am Mark Hertzberg.
The real Mark Hertzberg.
Will the real Mark Hertzberg please stand up and say bye-bye.
Until next time, bye.
The Kinetic Life podcast is sponsored by Kinetic Renew. Kinetic Renew is a 4-ounce shot of all-natural ingredients that deliver some amazing benefits, like improved mental clarity, long and short-term focus, and improved memory and cognition. Plus, Kinetic Renew improves mood with the added benefits of anti-stress and anti-anxiety. Here's what people are saying.
I drink a bottle of Kinetic Renew, and I'm in a better mood. It's like waking up on the right side of the bed. It's great.
My mental focus is clearly better.
I do notice that I have better clarity. Definitely improves my mood for sure. It reduces my stress.
Visit kineticlife.com today. Log on now and use promo code POD1 for 30% off. That's 30% off your order when you use promo code POD1. KineticLife.com. KINETIQ Life.com. Do it now. You're going to love Kinetic Renew. Thank you for listening to the Kinetic Life podcast. Catch a new show every other Thursday. You'll find us everywhere you can listen to a podcast. And remember, be safe, have fun, and go for your dreams. This podcast is for entertainment purposes only and should not be considered professional advice. All comments, jokes, views, and ideas expressed are those of the hosts or guests and do not represent any company or organizations with whom they may be affiliated. Always make sure to consult your own physician before starting any new diet, supplement, or exercise routine. Oh, and there's one more thing. If you're working on something that you really care about, you don't have to be pushed. The vision pulls you. Steve Jobs.